Now, if they want to turn this all around and say Diane changed her story, that's not what happened. And I said, I can't testify against him unless you can prove to me he did this. And I left. The next day, I did not see my children ever again until court scooped me into a corner so that, I don't know, so that I would say or do something that would incriminate me, which certainly worked.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the damn sofa. That's the damn sofa. My damn sassy sidekick, Mr. Roscoe P. Coltrane, is on the damn sofa. And my damn name is Paul. Now look, today we're going to continue down the rabbit hole of this absolute monster who goes by the name of Diane Downs. And I've done a couple other videos on this, so if you haven't watched those, you don't really need to watch those for this. If you're familiar with the case and you already know, what we're specifically going over is this. We are going over one of her parole hearings. Now, not the most recent one. This video you're watching was filmed on, July 26, 2022. So this is a couple of years ago. She did one recently where the audio circulated around whatever. She still ain't right, but I searched high and low and was only able to find like this video of this one that was done a few years ago. And it's like 13 minutes and it seems like it just starts in the middle of it or something. It's kind of weird. But literally every last second of it was just like, what am I, like what? So the way we do these kind of videos is this. I play a clip and then I come up here and I talk about it. I comment on it, that kind of thing. Then I will go back and read your comments down in the comment section, so please do drop them below if you have thoughts and opinions on this you know what show. Now before we get started, I always like to say thank you to everybody who makes the Sofa Squad possible. Y'all, I would not be here without you. I couldn't make the amount of content that I do without you. I thank you, Roscoe thanks you, and even the damn sofa thanks you. So without further ado, let's review
the crimes you were convicted of.
Absolutely. I didn't commit them and I still maintain my innocence.
Well, right off the bat, you know this is going to be a long and lengthy situation because she ain't budged one bit from times past. So that's the foot we're starting off on. Let's step in.
The night you took your children to the hospital in Springfield, will you describe the events of that evening?
Yes. My kids and I were sitting at home watching TV. We were watching Helen Keller, the Helen Keller story. I received a phone call from someone who said that he wanted me to come pick up some photographs for my boyfriend. Not of my boyfriend, but for my boyfriend, Rick.
Okay, so again, one thing that I found so interesting about her case, obviously the psychology of being an absolute just monster, because she is the definition of one, right? But the way that her story stays the same but completely changes at the same time, right? She has like this general narrative that she goes with, but she will come up with different things along the way. Now we'll also, hold on, in another one of my videos, like with the Oprah Winfrey thing that she did, if you watch that one, for example, when she goes into the whole thing about escaping and she's like, well, I did it because I was looking for a guy who I thought did this, and it's just like, what are you talking about? How have we arrived at all of this stuff that started off with the fact that you said you took your kids out, you were out sightseeing at some bizarre hour, a guy flags you down because he needs help, you stop with children in the car, you get out of the car, and he proceeds to kill your children and shoot you in the arm, right? And this entire government conspiracy theory, not literally, but you know what I'm saying, has come of this. So anyways, I just had to say that. Let's continue.
Rick is a guy that I'd been dating for about 6 weeks, and he claimed to be an FBI agent. Whether or not he was, I don't know. I certainly never called him at work or showed up or made him prove it or show a badge. It didn't matter to me. I wasn't, to me it was just dating.
Okay, so there's that one too. Now again, one thing that I think is interesting with her, and again we see this time and time again with these type of people, how they will paint themselves to, number one, be victims, number one, be better than, all that kind of stuff. So right here, you know, oh, he claimed to be this, but I never followed up on this, I never checked with it, I just thought we were dating, She would have you think that she should be wearing white on her wedding day, number one. Number two, that, you know, has never done anything wrong, that she is just, you know, a victim to circumstance.
But I received a phone call about 9:15 from someone who said I needed to come pick some photographs up for Rick. I piled the kids in the car, we went out, to go meet this person to pick up the photographs. I stopped by Heather, wow, I can't remember Heather's last name now. I stopped by Heather's house because I told Heather on the phone a few days earlier that I had a newspaper ad for her. So she had been wanting to buy a horse, and this was a newspaper ad that would allow her to adopt a horse.
Okay, now another thing I think is interesting with her in other situations, interrogations or whatever you want to call them, this happens to be a hearing, the insane amount of details. Now look at Diane, like to me in this one, she already did this years past, but she hasn't moved away from this where she just keeps talking, and it's like it soothes her, and she throws in all of this useless information. To me, this is, again, if you watch me, I'm not some damn psychologist or anything fancy like that, but this is just a way to get away from the reality. She could sum up very quickly what took place on this evening, but who wants to do that when you know really what truly happened, if that makes sense?
So I had told her that I had a newspaper clipping for her that I'd found at work. So as long as we were going out to meet this guy to pick up photographs, we went by Heather's house. Heather said, I already got a horse just the other day. So we went to see the horse. We got back in the car. We left. I went to meet this guy. Somebody in the road flagged us down. I stopped and got out of my car.
Okay, now again, just with all the information, we went to her house, but she said this, so we went here, and we did this, and and da-da-da. Now remember, she's had, decades at this point to think of the story or whatever, but here we get into the story we're all familiar with, which we were familiar with, going over to the friend's house, all this kind of stuff, and the boyfriend, I get it, right? Little nuances change along the way from hearing to hearing and time to interview, all this stuff. So here we're getting ready to dive into what took place with this. But again, notice how the underlying thing for this particular interview is, without saying it at this point in it, she would never have left the house if it wasn't for the boyfriend's person calling her. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where she's planting this. Like, again, innocent bystander. I was going out. She can paint it any damn way she wants to. I don't know anybody who's going to stop with their small children in the road, man, woman, at nighttime and get out of a car to help a random stranger that's just a man nonetheless. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense and never will.
And he said something to the effect of, I want your car. And I laughed at him. And I said, you've got to be kidding. Because in my mind, those kinds of things don't happen. In Arizona, those things don't happen. I don't know about Oregon, but in Arizona, those things don't happen. And so he jumped into the car, leaned into the car, and started firing the weapon. And it happened so quickly that by the time he stood up and faced me, it was over. It was just that fast.
Okay, so we're back with the same story that she has peddled this whole time of she gets out, he says he wants to take the car. She changes the words that she set up a little bit, but that's expected. He jumps in, it happens so fast. And again, I always go back to this with the story. What would be the point? Number one, asking this to happen so you don't get that, so you reach in the car and shoot the children. Why? What is the point to that, right? When you hear of these senseless crimes, think of Susan Smith. Somebody jacked me at the car thing and took my kids and did. Why? You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody who wants your car, they don't want the kids. That's a lot of heat to bring on, right? They want to get you and the kids out and take your car. If they were after her to do something to her, okay, they're going to take her off. Who does that? And I'm not trying to say that this does not happen, because I'm sure there are one-off things that do take place. First of all, we hear about these people who wipe out their families, but there's a factor in there if they know them, right? This random kind of crime like this is just very uncommon. And like, she's trying to paint it, well, I don't know. This doesn't happen in Arizona. I don't know about Oregon, but this sure doesn't happen in Arizona. It doesn't happen in a lot of places, right? And so that's just a bizarre thing. Now, I shouldn't say that. In this day and age, my God, the world's so damn crazy now. This could be a viable thing, sadly. But at this point in time, this is unheard of.
He said something about the car again, and I struggled with him. The gun discharged. He fell back. I jumped in the car, put the keys in the ignition, and took off. The car door shut by itself. That's it. And I went to the hospital. Christy and Danny were in the back seat. When we got to the hospital, they were still crying. The nurses reported that they were still crying. The state says that I was the one that shot them and that I wanted them dead. If that was the case, I would not have taken them to the hospital still crying. There are so many other ways to accomplish such a horrific deed if I was going to do it. I'm certainly bright enough to figure out another way besides some way that looks so absolutely insane and hokey that nobody would believe it. I'm not dumb.
Now this part right here just sends chills down my spine, because here's the thing with this part. It literally just disturbs me, because first of all, I think that she did go with it because it is hokey and obvious, but she probably was thinking, that way nobody will think I did it. But the fact that you're going to sit here in your parole hearing and basically be like, I'm smart enough to have done this much better if I wanted to kill my children. Like, who says that, right? Like, who is proud of that statement, right? Apparently Diane.
Ultimately, you told several different versions of the story when law enforcement investigated this, correct? When you talked.
Not correct.
Ultimately, well, I understood that you told law enforcement that this was done by two men with ski masks.
This is what somebody told me. How do I explain this?
Yeah, Diane, how are we going to explain this? Now, one thing that, we're going to listen here in a second to what she goes into, but also, you can go back and just look at all the interviews that she's given and the public appearances, if you will, because I really think that's what they were for her. They were public appearances, and you can put together how the story changes, right? Now, again, she's had all this time to spin this together and come up with this. This is all she probably does, is sit here and think of this. In addition to conning and scheming her, cellmates and stuff like that, right? So let's see what old Diane has to say.
After my children and I were attacked, the police kept saying, Diane, you must have lapses in your memory because there's holes in this you could drive a semi-truck through. None of this makes sense. You're forgetting something. I believed, because I'd never had any dealings with authorities, and I believed the authorities, and so I thought they did, that I had lapses of memory. I can't tell you how the towel got around my arm, so I know from my own personal experience that I did have at least that much of a lapse of memory. I don't know how the towel got around my arm. So when when people would call me up and people would say, I know so-and-so and he said such and such. I have another guy would call and say, I have a neighbor and he has a car that just looks just like that and he's been talking. These kinds of things were being said to me either by phone. People would stop me on my mail route. I worked in Cottage Grove, and people would drive all the way to Cottage Grove just to meet me on my mail route and tell me these kinds of things.
Can you imagine how creepy it would be if you lived on that mail route? And in fact, if there's anybody out here who she was your mail woman, drop it in the damn comments. Would love to know what she was like. But just imagine being after this happened, especially, and she's on your mail route, and you're like, how does she even have this job? You know what I'm saying? This is just yikes.
So I would call the police, or I would go to the police, and I would say, this is what's being told to me. Those are the kinds of things they would say that I changed my story. I wasn't changing my story. I was trying to help. The police kept saying I had lapses of memory. People were calling me and telling me things that I thought, well, maybe this is what happened that I don't know. And so I would tell the police, believing that I was helping them investigate. They didn't tell anybody that these are reports, that I was giving them reports from other people. They would simply say, Diane came in and said such and such. The one about the ski mask was dreams that I was having. And they kept saying, well, maybe you forgot something. So when I would have a dream and I would wake up, I would think, well, maybe that's what I would forget.
My God. Loves to hear her own damn voice. My God. Can you imagine if you were the damn jail psychologist and you had to go talk to her as part of your job on a regular basis? The torture she would put you through. My God. Listen to this. What was that, a minute-long clip we just watched? She went from A to damn Z on that. I mean, and it's like, I get what she's trying to say. I don't know if what that says about me. I get what she's trying to say. Do I believe it? Absolutely not. It's like she's going through, again, this is somebody who has dissected every word, every moment, everything, and has come up with a little excuse and reason for everything. And that's what people like her don't realize. And I said this about, what was the video we just did on, the suitcase woman. I can't think of her name right now. We'll keep going. But the suitcase murderer woman, where they're good at lying about, Sarah Boone was her name. They're good at lying about little details, but they don't look at the big picture, where all the lies are going to. They're so focused on lying to all this tiny little stuff that they don't back away and say, oh, this makes literally zero sense, right?
And so the ski mask story, I didn't tell the police. I was talking to somebody on the phone, and I was sharing this dream, this thought with somebody, trying to understand in the same way that you would talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so that you can, because if you talk, maybe you can reach something, maybe you can find something that's inside you that's locked off. And so I was sharing this with somebody else, and the police were tape recording those phone calls and then said, oh, there she goes, she changed her story. And that wasn't it, and they know that wasn't it.
Again, oh my God, she has gone over everything with a fine-tooth comb and come up with an excuse for it, and she just doesn't see that, right? But she never would. This one is way too far gone, right? She never needs to see the damn light of day.
Okay, well, ma'am, I guess perhaps you could clarify it for me, because as you said, I am the newest person here, and I'm asking you new questions. But when I'm reading the pre-sentence investigation, and it says, subsequently, defendant gave a total of 3 different versions of the shooting, including that it was done by 2 men wearing ski masks, and also that she knew the person who shot them. Did you not give 3 different versions of the story?
Y'all buckle up, because he asked her a big-ass question, and my God. Let me get the damn sofa seat about out, y'all, because we might need it for this part.
The police said, strangers don't shoot strangers for no reason. So I believe this had to be somebody who knew me. They also, at one point, the last day that I got to see Christy in the hospital, I believe it was June 15th of '83, Doug Welch came to the hospital and said, Steve Downs did this. We know Steve Downs did this. You need to be willing to testify against him. I said, how do you know Steve Downs, my ex-husband? How do you know Steve Downs did this? Give me the evidence. He said, don't worry about the evidence, just be willing to testify.
First of all, bless Chrissy's little heart having to have anything to do with this monster. I mean, my God, I just can't imagine. And then, of course, here we go with the ex-husband did it. Now, the one thing I agree with her is when the cops said strangers don't kill strangers. I just personally think the cops knew right away. I mean, they did. It's like, it doesn't take much to realize where it's like, the story alone, like we've gone over 100 times, it doesn't make sense, right? And then obviously we know that, people came forward. Well, I was following her to the hospital and I had to pass her, she was going so slow. You know what I'm saying? Like all this stuff going on, but she's going to deflect, throw every cop, every person she can right under the bus.
I said, if you can't prove to me he did it, he's not the one that fired the gun. He said, but he was behind it. I said, I cannot testify against somebody unless you can prove to me that he did this. I know he hates me, but why would he hurt the kids? Doug Welch said, you better be willing to play ball or you'll never see your kids again. And I said, I cannot testify against somebody unless you can prove to me that he did it.
Again, notice here, taking the moral high road, the better than. The cops are the bad ones. They wanted me to do wrong, but I did. No, not me. I'm not going to get up here and lie. I'm better than that.
The next day when I went to see my children, I was not allowed to see my children ever again. That gave me the belief that the police were absolutely convinced that somebody I knew did this. And if the police believed it, then I believed it. Now, if they want to turn this all around and say Diane changed her story, that's not what happened. And you guys...
all that rigmarole to get to trying to answer this damn question of the 3 different stories. So she's just going to believe what anyone else said and then own that as her story and go on with it like that's the truth. Okay.
Are on the parole board, and I know you work with the legal authorities. You work with police, you work with the district attorneys, and so you know how they work. It's how I know now what they were trying to do. They were trying to scoop me into a corner so that I don't know, so that I would say or do something that would incriminate me, which certainly worked. But that's not what happened.
I don't think they really needed to paint her into a corner. I think she did this all on her own.
Though what I'm telling you is exactly what happened. Doug Welch came to the the hospital in Springfield. Oh, I can't even think. Mackenzie Willamette. No, anyway, to the Springfield Hospital. He sat right there. He caught me when I was coming through the front door. He pulled me into the lobby. And these are the things he said to me. I went to see Christy for 15 minutes because that's all I was allowed. I left, and he was standing there, and he goes, "I'm not playing, Diane." And I said, "Prove to me Steve did this." He says, "Let us worry about the proof."
Again, just a side note, but again, notice how she's completely descriptive. She's trying to make it believable. I came into the front door, he pulled me into the lobby, I went and did this, we did this. I mean, who adds all of this unnecessary information? Nobody cares about all that, but she's trying to paint a vivid picture. She's trying to add all of this unnecessary detail to make it seem believable because this is a total lie.
And I said, "I can't testify against him unless you can prove to me he did this." And I left. The next day, I did not see my children ever again until court. And that was it. And so I believed. I believed what I thought the police believed.
So here's my thing on this. So if you left off saying the police are coming to me and they're saying, if you don't do this, you know, you got to play hardball, you got to do this, yada yada yada. You know, Steve, your ex-husband did this, all this, and she's like, "Show me the proof, show me the proof, show me the proof." And then the next thing, you never see your children, and that's ripped away. So then your next thing is, so I believed them and went with that and said that that was the story. I mean, again, listen to the overall picture. That should just tell you even more. Oh wow, they're really trying to frame him or me because they haven't given me proof of it. Now I can't see my children, and this is of course just, you know, we're going off on left-hand field here if this were true. She's not thinking of that. She's so busy trying to paint this realistic, fictitious picture. She doesn't see that it makes absolutely no sense.
Now, maybe they did believe that. Maybe to this day they still believe it, because Fred Hughey was, another time he told my attorney, Jim Jagger said, "Fred, you know Diane is innocent." He said, "I know that and you know that, but she's covering for somebody, and as long as she's going to cover for somebody, she's going to do that person's time."
We're going to file that under things that never happened for 200, Alex. I mean, come on. Now, I'm sure that, I think I would even question if her damn attorney would ever say that. I mean, come on. It's like, to me, this is a clear case of like, we're just trying to keep you out of old Sparky, okay? Like, that's where we're at. But can you imagine representing her? Can you imagine representing her? It would never happen.
Jim Jagger said, go ahead.
I said, so is it your... Is it what you're saying today is that the prosecutor in your case knew you were innocent, yet in order to get someone else, to convict someone else for this, he basically threatened to keep your kids from you in order to get you to make incriminating testimony against somebody else?
Now he just lays it out there. He sums up her 30 minutes worth of a damn story into a couple of, we're not going to say logical sentences because her story's not logical, but just in a way of, this is the basis of what you're saying, yes or no. Let's see what she says.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Jim Jagger told me Fred Hughey said this to him. I don't know that Fred Hughey said this. I have no reason to believe Fred Hughey said this now.
How interesting. Look at how quick she was to slip out of that. Well, he didn't say it to me. He said this to Fred Hughey, and I don't know Fred Hughey. And really? I mean, after all that, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, oh my God, this is exhausting. Again, I'll say, imagine getting in an argument at home with her over something completely basic, like, where's the coffee?
But that's what Jim Jagger told me Fred Hughey said. So from that point on, I believed, from that point on, I believed that Fred Hughey believed that it was somebody that I knew. That's what I'm telling you. That is what shaped my belief patterns. And so when I would talk to the police, I spoke to the police as if it was somebody that was familiar to me.
I mean, I don't know what I would love to see, just a camera on the parole board's faces, right? I mean, because I would just be sitting there like, mean, come on. Are you kidding me? This is some of the craziest ish I have ever heard of. I mean, this is insane, right?
Not because I believed they were familiar to me, but because Fred Hugie told Jim Jagger, and Jim Jagger told me that Fred Hugie told him this. I have no reason to believe Fred Hugie would do that. I don't. Fred Hugie adopted my children, I think, during the trial. Can I go ahead and jump ahead with this?
Sure.
I mean, my God. And of course, she's going to back out of this and back out of that. And now she wants to jump forward to the trial. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, come on, right? And it has to just be a bitter pill that the damn Fred Hugie has adopted her children, right? But, well, let's just see what she says about all that.
Okay. During the trial, at the very end of the trial, Fred Hugie, they brought in a mock-up of the car, and Fred Hugie got a gun, and he was reenacting the crime. And when he was going through the motions of firing the gun at the Christie doll and at the Cheryl doll and at the Danny doll, he couldn't shoot the Danny doll because the Danny doll was back here. And he raised up and he looked at me, and I went like this, and his face, he had a look of incredulation on his face, and his mouth started to open, and I nodded my head yes, and he had to switch the gun to the left hand. A right-handed person could not have shot the Danny doll. It was at that time, I don't think at any time before that did Fred Hugie believe that he was doing anything wrong. I think that he believed full bore that what he was doing was the right thing.
I mean, y'all, this is just... Her narrative, she should be a fiction writer, okay? Now, she's describing the scene that went down in the car, the reenactment, which can you imagine having to watch that if you're, number one of the children, anybody else but her, right? And so she's describing this go down. I mean, again, the detail of it, I went like this, and he went like this, and then he had to switch hands, and then he had to do this. And I'm just like, my God. I mean, it's like, I sit here and think, I'm like, I guess to pass time, she's just reviewed every little detail of her case and come up with this and studied this and reviewed it and raked over it to come up with all of these different solutions for each little tiny thing. Because she's going into some big conspiracy stuff here, y'all. I mean, I'm talking like major allegations of misconduct, yada, 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 so on and so forth. So let's continue.
But, and I'm not inside Fred Hugie's head, I don't have the right to speak for him, and I won't speak for him. But it was after that he adopted my children, and according to Christie, never said a bad word against me. Ever. That was out of Christie's mouth. Fred Hugie, in all the time that he raised her, never spoke ill of me. I believe that Fred Hugie knows that there is a man out there that was hunting my children, and it wasn't until after Christie told her schoolmates that she drew pictures in school, and she said, "This is the man who shot us." I lied in court because they wanted me to say this and they wouldn't leave me alone. Dr. Peters, she said, Dr. Peterson kept pressuring me and he wouldn't leave me alone.
Okay, let's just break that down a little bit, right? Because it's a lot to take in. So first of all, I would imagine that in this scenario of him adopting the children and all this kind of stuff, and we're going based on what she's saying is the truth. That according to Christie, he never spoke ill of her. I would almost venture to say, like, how much did they really speak of her, right? Because in my mind, like, I'm just trying to put myself in this situation, and again, it's very hard to because I've never been anywhere close to this, but I'm like, if I end up taking in, let's say, just children that I know have gone through a traumatic experience, I mean, obviously, therapists are going to be involved in this kind of stuff. I'm not going to want to bring that up. I certainly, even though I might think horrible things about the whatever parent it was that put them through this, I'm not going to want to like say that out loud, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't think that would be appropriate. Although Diane sits here and it's like, well, honey, that's because it's probably proper parenting, which she would know nothing about, right? Now she's going to go into, well, Christy lied because the therapist was, or the doctor was pressuring her, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I mean, my God, it just goes on and on. But also, I just feel like people like this, people like Diane, their voice soothes them because she just goes from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And I'm glad that the parole board just kind of lets her go so that she can like get it all out, if you will, so that there's no, well, I didn't get a chance to do, you know, whatever, right? I mean, again, I don't think they will ever let her out. she's too dangerous. She has no accountability. All she does is come up with other ways of other things that could have happened, at least at this point of time, that's just like, oh my God.
Those children, the Andresens, told their mother told her, the apartment manager, and the apartment manager told somebody. Now, he didn't tell my attorney until 1991, but he apparently told somebody before that. But it was at that time when Christy was in that school and classmates with the Andresen twins that Fred Hughey decided to adopt my children.
I mean, she has sat here and drug every person she can think of into the damn story. Now, I'll say this. This is where this clip, this whole little interview thing falls off for me. I've not been able to find any more of it. God knows if you know where to find the rest of the clips. Drop it in the comment section. I mean, this is probably enough to handle for one session anyways, right? I mean, this is going to probably be like a 30-45 minute video or something. This is one of those cases, and I haven't even gotten to, I know the part of hearing like her other child that she had, what they had to say. So much more out on this. It's one of the most shocking crimes there is, and it just gets more shocking because to see what comes out of Diane's mouth, it absolutely floors me, and to hear of what a horrid person she was even before this happened, and the absolute horror that she put her children through, and God knows the other victims in her life of people she's just encountered, right, and probably destroyed their lives, some hook or crook or whatever. Anyways, so if you're still watching, drop hearts in the comment section for the children, for all of her victims. And that's it. I appreciate you hanging out and watching this with me. If there's other kind of footage or interrogations or anything like that you want to see me do, just drop them down in the comment section and I'll look them up and we'll see what we can do. Anyways, thank you, Sofa Squad. I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever it is for you. And until we gather around the damn sofa with Mr. Roscoe, I'll see you soon.